This lesson is Formatting Text with CSS. In this lesson, you'll learn how to use margins to add or subtract space between blocks of text on your page. You'll also learn about the CSS border property and how to use comments to turn the styles of your page off and on as needed. Now, this lesson is intended for viewers who need to learn the basics of HTML and CSS, or simply need a refresher. Lessons specifically related to HTML5 begin with our Lesson 6 video using HTML5 markup. Now, to begin with, you'll want to open the 03 sizing.html document located in your 03 lessons folder. Here I've done a few things already to this page, including adding the size for the heading 1 and the heading 2, as well as the paragraph, and I've also added the font family. What you'll be focusing on here is how to increase or decrease the amount of space between these blocks of text. Currently, there are no margin styles set in our CSS document. All of the space between these elements are created by the browser. So to get a sense of how this works, let's go to our code and look at the styles. In order to see this clearly, we're going to go ahead and put borders on all of these styles. So to do that, I'm going to add the border property, and here I'm saying the border is thin, red, and solid. Of course, we could change any three of these values to give ourselves a different border, but this will work for our purposes. I'm also going to add that same border property to our heading 1 and our heading 2. Let's save our file and look at it in the browser. I'm going to reload this current page, and now we can see the borders around all of the elements. What this does is allow us to see more clearly the space between these paragraphs and the headings. So this is our margin space. And right now the browser is adding that space. So we can decrease it by creating a margin property that says 0 margins. So let's start with the heading 2 and add the following. Margin bottom 0M. Let's save our file. Go back to our page, reload, and we don't see any change. Why is that? Well, because the heading 2 has 0 margin space on the bottom, but the paragraph below it has margin top space. So we need to change that to 0 as well. What I'm going to do here is copy the margin bottom declaration from H2, put it into the paragraph, and change this from margin bottom to margin top. Save our file, go back to the browser, reload, and now we collapse the space between the heading and the paragraph. So this is an important concept to learn because, of course, in addition to margin top and bottom, we also have margin left and right. We don't use that in this exercise, but that's how you begin to add space between different elements. Now, of course, the borders that we're using here are simply for visual purposes. If we want to remove these in order to get a sense of how they look on the screen, we can add a comment. I'll go back to my code, and let's go ahead and remove the borders from the paragraph and the heading 2. Now, we could, of course, just delete this entire rule. The problem is, if we want to re-add it, we're going to have to retype. So we can simply add a comment. Comments in CSS look like this. You can add a / and an asterisk, and then an asterisk and another / at the end. We can steal these by copying them and putting them in the H2 section, and copy this one and place it at the end. We'll save, go back to our browser, and reload. And now we've removed all the borders from the paragraphs and the heading 2. Of course, the heading 1 still has its border. Now, of course, this concept of zeroing out margins is one that we use later on within our lessons. Many designers will zero out all of their elements and put them in a style sheet called reset. By resetting all of your elements, you can then begin to build them back up using style rules within your internal style sheet. For now, though, you've learned how to use margins to add or subtract space between blocks of text on your page, and you've also learned about the CSS border property and how to use comments to turn the styles of your page off and on as needed.